How many here like their eyes? Mine are not very good. Not very good at all. Been this way since I was in 5th grade. I noticed my batting average was going downhill fast. I couldn't read the board anymore. So they said, you probably need glasses. And I said, no way, I don't need glasses. I needed glasses. I still very much need glasses. And with those little glasses on, it is nice to be able to see. Seeing is wonderful, isn't it? Colors and the sunshine and the people and all the beautiful things. Today we're going to talk about, though, blindness and the fact that we are all a little blind. We all have something called truth blindness. How many know somebody who has truth blindness? They cannot see the truth if it came up and smacked them in the head. Let's be honest with ourselves. How many of us have an area of our life where we have truth blindness? Come on now. Be honest. We were all born this way. In fact, we come naturally to it. So let's not pick on ourselves too much. Let's go to Romans chapter 1. Just real quick. Romans chapter 1. Let's remind ourselves of who we are, who we naturally are. This is our natural state, right? Romans chapter 1, verse 21. Because that when they knew God. So, when we started out, do we know the truth? Do we know the truth of God, of who He is, and He created us, and in all of His creation yells out and screams that this is who He is. We know the truth, but what? They glorified Him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds, and four-footed beasts, and creeping things. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness, to the lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies together with themselves, etc., etc., etc. We knew the truth. The truth is out there, as the old tagline says, right? The truth is available. God does not hide the truth. There are some out there that say, well, you have to have a certain intelligence, you have to put certain effort into it before you can know. No, the truth is evident. But what do you have to do to see it? Open your eyes. Be willing to open your eyes and let God show you the truth. In fact, that's one of the reasons Jesus came, isn't it? We don't need to go there, but back in Luke chapter 4, we already went through that a few weeks ago, when Jesus sat down in the synagogue in Nazareth, his hometown. It came his time to teach, and they handed him the book of Isaiah. And he scrolled through it, and he found in there a passage about the coming Messiah, and how the coming Messiah would come to set the people free. Right? When we're studying free in 2023, he came to set us free. The poor, the damaged, the sinners, the downtrodden, the offended, everybody came to set us free. The other thing he says in there, he came to open the eyes of the what? The blind. It's why he came. In fact, let's go to John chapter 11 real quick. Why? Because we were there last week. John chapter 11, which tells the story of how Jesus came and raised Lazarus from the dead. Do you remember that? He went, as God told him, he waited until Lazarus was completely dead. And then 4 days later, he showed up. And what did the people all say? John chapter 11, verse 37. And some of them said, could not this man, which opened the eyes of the blind, have caused that even this man should not have died? Jesus went around and physically opened the eyes of the blind. And was that a significant miracle? So significant that all this time later, by the way, when did he do that? The one they're referencing, these are people from Jerusalem. The one they're referencing is back during the Feast of the Tabernacles. Everybody remember that one? Nobody remembers the Feast of the Tabernacles. Feast of Booths. What they would all do, according to Leviticus, is for this feast, which was around September, October. So think back, what were you doing back in September, October? I guarantee you were not on the top of your house in a little shack you built with sticks and palms and living in it. But that's what they would do, to remind them of the wilderness and provision of God and things like that. So it was during that Feast of the Tabernacles. So it was only a few months before this. Right? Basically, they went through winter. That was the end of fall. They've gone through winter, and now here Jesus is going into Passover time. The next feast of Leviticus was this one. And over those 3 months, 3 or 4 months, what were people all talking about? Well, while he was there at the Feast of Tabernacles, this guy came up to him who said, I cannot see. Why couldn't he see? He had no eyeballs. How many would agree that makes it a little more difficult? From birth, deformed from birth, had no ability to see. And what did Jesus say? Tough being you. No. Oh, nothing I can do about that. Have you been to the doctor? No. What did he say? Well, took some mud, roll them up, wash it off, and you will what? See. So what did he do? Washed it off, and guess what? He could see. See everybody. See everything for the first time in his life. What was his job as a blind man? A beggar. That's all you can be. That was all that society said. You're going to be a beggar. That's all you're going to be. And that's all you can be. You are cursed because you did something wrong. He was born that way. What did he do wrong? Or something your parents did or your grandparents did. Somebody did something wrong. You're cursed. You're worthless. Just sit there and beg, and maybe we'll give you a few dimes. But what did Jesus say? No, I can change your life. And he gave him sight. It was so impressive that the council, the religious leaders, said, hey, dude, you're running around saying you can see now. We need to talk to you. So they brought him in, said, tell us what happened. He says, well, I've been blind since birth. This guy named Jesus came, put mud on there, I washed it off, and I could see. They said, that can't be. We know this Jesus. Let's bring his parents in. They brought the parents in. Has he really been blind his whole life? Can you believe asking that? No, he's been scamming people forever. He just loves being a bum. Just loves going around panhandling. This is such a great and wonderful job. He decided to pretend to be blind all these years. No. You know what they said, though? They were so scared they were going to get into trouble. They said, well, we don't know. Ask him. So they brought him back in. Who did this? Who did this? Jesus did this. In fact, let's go real quick to the story. It's in the book of John. Go quickly over to John chapter 9. And they're grilling this guy. There's no way this Jesus could have done this. There's no way this could happen. How did this happen? Have you been faking it all this time? What's going on here? Why wouldn't they believe, by the way? Because they were blind. Was the truth right there in front of them? In fact, these are the same guys that when later, a few months later, raises Lazarus from the dead, what was their response last week? Oh, that can't really be true. That can't be true. We're not going to believe that. In fact, let's kill him, right? That was their response to that. What's the response here? They're looking at a guy who now can see who could never see. And we're going to pick up the story in chapter 9, verse 30. The man answered and said unto them, why, herein is a marvelous thing, that you know not from whence he, this Jesus, and yet he hath opened mine eyes. You don't know where he came from. You won't believe who he is, yet I know he opened my eyes. Now we know that God hears not sinners, but if any man be a worshiper of God and does his will, him he hears. Since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened the eyes of one born blind? You think he checked into it? I probably asked everybody. Is there any way, any doctor, any way to fix this? The answer was no. Verse 33, if this man were not of God, he could do what? Nothing. They answered and said, and this council said to him, you were altogether born in sins, and you teach us, and they cast him out. We don't want to. Who's the blind one here? The leaders are blind. You notice how many times he said we know? We know that God doesn't listen to sinners. We know that there's no other way except by God's intervention that I was going to be able to see. We know these things. The truth is there, isn't it? Right before their eyes. And what do they decide to do? In fact, they threw him out of the temple. Jesus, verse 35. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and when he had found him, he said unto him, Dost thou believe on the Son of God? And he answered and said, Who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him? And Jesus said unto him, Thou hast both seen him, and it is he that talketh with thee. I like that first part. You've seen him. How many times have people said that to him in his lifetime? He had seen nothing. And even he hadn't actually seen him. He'd never seen Jesus before. Because you remember, he put mud on his eyes and he went and washed it away. He'd never seen him before. And now he's face to face with his Creator, face to face with his God. And he said, I am the one. I am the one that healed you. I am the Son of God. I am the one you must believe in. Verse 38, and he said, Lord, I believe, and he worshipped him. And Jesus said, For judgment I am come into the world, that they which see not might see, and that they which see might be made blind. Those who claim to see, those who say, I have all the answers, those who say, I know my truth. Ever hear that nowadays? I know my truth. Well, how about the truth? Does the truth matter? The truth matters. And guess who was listening in? Verse 40. And some of the Pharisees which were with him heard these words and said unto him, Are we blind also? Jesus said unto them, If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say, We see, therefore your sin remains. In other words, if you were truly blind, innocent, having no understanding, given no information, having no idea who Jesus was, okay, fine. But do they know? Have they seen? And yet they say, we see what we want to see. That's truth blindness, isn't it? I will see what I want to see. I will hear what I want to hear. I will believe what I want to believe. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? I don't know why we have such trouble with this. We go all the way through school where what? What is 2 plus 2? No, it's whatever I want to believe it is. Right? There's answers. There's truth, isn't there? There's answers, and God gives us the answers. He tells us who He is. He tells us who we are. He tells us we need salvation. And if we will just willingly say, Lord, open my eyes, will He make it all clear to us? And then can we be saved? And this man was saved. So as he's heading to the cross, as he's heading to that final sacrifice needed to wash away all of our sins, he runs across a bunch of blind people. One physically blind, but so many more that are soul blind, truth blind. And can we be that sometimes too? How many have eyes to see? But how come sometimes we don't see? How many of us have a soul that's saved by God that is open to the truth, yet sometimes we do not see it? Why not? Well, here's some problems that we have. And we're going to start in the book of Mark. Let's all go there. Mark chapter 10. And I want to start with this one because this is us. Not this particular problem, but because this is his disciples, his followers. These are people here. James and John. Ever heard of them? James and John, disciples of Jesus Christ. Ones who left their job to follow Jesus, had been walking with Jesus for 3.5 years, had seen the miracles, had heard him preach, and had put their faith in him. They knew who Jesus was. How many of us can say that today? Hopefully everybody can. I know who Jesus is. I know He saved me. I know Him. I'm His child. I'm His disciple. I'm His follower. But sometimes we can even get blind, can't we? And let's see what happened to them. Mark chapter 10, verse 35. And this is on the way, by the way, on the way to Jerusalem. This is all part of his trip. And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came unto him, saying, Master, we would that thou shouldest do for us whatsoever we shall desire. By the way, don't start requests that way. Please do whatever I want you to do, right? And Jesus is a nice guy, verse 36, and he said to them, what would you that I should do for you? Let's get that down first before I agree. And they said unto him, grant unto us that we may sit one on thy right hand and the other on thy left hand in thy glory. So when we all get to heaven, I know you're important. You're going to have a nice seat. One on the right and one on the left. What are they seeking? Glory. Glory for who? Glory for themselves. Glory for themselves. And sometimes we as Christians, as children of God, can we get kind of caught up into the glory of things? Now, you could say, well, at least they're not asking for earthly things, right? At least they're not asking for big houses and things here and lots of glory here, because that can also trip us up sometimes, can't it? To get into the whole thing of saying, this is what it's all about. Glory for me, fame for me, power for me, all for me. And we're getting caught up in it. And what did Jesus say? And Jesus said to them, you know not what you ask. Can you drink of the cup that I drink of, and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? By the way, the cup he's talking about there, it's the same cup that he's talking about later on when he says what? Father, if there's any way that this cup could pass from me, it's death. Can you take this cup of death and die for the truth? And what did they say? Well, of course, what are they going to say? Of course we can. And they said unto him, we can. And Jesus said unto them, you shall indeed drink of the cup that I drink of, and with the baptism I am baptized with shall you be baptized. So they will, by the way. James is the first one of the disciples to die a martyr, to be killed for the truth. John is the last of the ones to die for the truth. But to sit on my right hand and on thy left hand is not mine to give, but it shall be given to them for whom it is prepared. And when the 10, the other disciples, heard it, they began to be much displeased with James and John. And they created all kinds of problems there, didn't they? Because they wanted glory. And this is the thing. Sometimes we can get so fixated on who? Us. How many hours a day are you around you? How many hours a day are your problems your problems? Right? Your desires, right? And you're around you, and you can start getting so fixated on you, you lose sight of what? The truth. Who is your life about? Who's the star of your life? It's not you. It's God. It's for God's glory. It's God's plan. God's way, isn't it? God's will. That's what you got to focus on. Focus on that truth and not let these own desires and selfishness get in the way and cause us to be what? Blind. He said, you're blind. Don't think that way. Watch out what you're doing. This is good for all of us Christians to remember. Don't get so fixated on our life, our future, our things, but put our trust in who? Put your trust in God. Then let's go to Luke chapter 18. Keep going through the Gospels here. And we're going to meet a blind man, a guy by the name of Blind Bartimaeus. Why was that his nickname? Because he was blind. And everybody knew him. So this is, again, Jesus is walking on his way to Jerusalem, and they have to pass through Jericho. Okay? And as they're going through Jericho, in chapter 18, verse 35 is where we're going to start. And it came to pass that as he was come nigh unto Jericho, a certain blind man sat by the wayside begging, because that's what they did. And hearing the multitude pass by, he asked what it meant. And they told him that Jesus of Nazareth passeth by. And he cried, saying, Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. And they which went before what? Rebuked him. Be quiet, sinner. You cursed of God. Keep it down. Don't bother this good man, right? They rebuked him that he should hold his peace. But he cried so much the more, "Thou Son of David, have mercy on me." That didn't keep him quiet, did it? He just started yelling even louder over all the people, trying to keep him quiet, asking for God's mercy. Verse 40, "And Jesus stood and commanded him to be brought unto him. And when he was come near, he asked him." I always, when I read that in my head, I always have the people bring him and say, "Oh, now you're going to get it. Oh, you should have been quiet. Oh." Because do you see any compassion there? Do you see any love there? In fact, all of these people, and some of them were probably disciples. Some of them were just people of the city. Some of them may be important people of the city, right? Coming out to see Jesus. And here they have this beggar, this sinner, coming up and daring. Because what did they see when they saw him? Just a sinner. Just a loser. Just accursed. What did Jesus see? He saw a man whom he loved. A man he was going to die for. A man he created. A man he lives for. Who was the blind one there? The blind man isn't the blind one. It's the people who are blind to the needs of those around them. Blind to the love that they should have for those around them, to their neighbor, the needs of their neighbors and those around. And they just rejected him and judged him, didn't they? But that's not what Jesus did. Verse 41, Jesus said, "What wilt thou that I should do unto thee?" And he said, "Lord, that I might receive my sight." And Jesus said unto him, "Receive thy sight, thy faith hath saved thee." And immediately he received his sight and followed him, glorifying who? God. And all the people, when they saw it, gave praise unto God. I would put in there, finally. Right? How about us? How many of us, even who are Christians, can be blind to the needs of those around us? More willing to judge, more willing to run them down, more just assume the worst of them than to actually find out what's going on. How can I help? Because what can God do? What can we do? Well, whatever God wants us to, right? Compassion. But instead, these people were blind to him. Oh, they may have thrown a little change his way every once in a while. But how many have ever really reached out to him? Is that the way we're supposed to be? Blind to those around us? No. Our eyes are supposed to be what? Open. With love and compassion. Then let's keep going into Jericho. Anybody know who lived in Jericho? A little short man who liked to climb a sycamore tree. A guy by the name of Zacchaeus. So he goes by blind Bartimaeus, who's no longer blind. Yeah, good stuff. And then he goes into town and he's going to run into another blind person. Not physically blind, but again, soul blind. Zacchaeus, chapter 19, verse 1. And Jesus entered and passed through Jericho, and behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, which was the chief among the publicans. And he was rich. Why was he rich? Because he was chief among the publicans. And what are the publicans? The publicans are the tax collectors for the Romans. And again, everybody knows what they would do. If Rome said you need to collect $50 from that person, that guy came up, you'd say, let's see here, Tommy, you owe $75. And what does Rome get? 50. And what does the tax collector get? 25. And if you're the chief publican, guess what you get? A piece of everybody's action. So he's a pretty good spot. Who knew that about him? Everybody knew that about him. Every time they saw his big house, every time they saw the big parties, every time we saw this, it reminded them, this guy's ripping off his own people. Is that right? No. How did they see him? With hate. But how did Jesus see him? Let's keep going. Verse 3. And Zacchaeus sought to see Jesus, who he was, and could not for the press because he was little of stature. So here he is actually blocked from seeing. Right? He's not physically blind, but physically he cannot see. Can't get over the crowd. And who's letting him in? I always picture somebody's like, oh, a child's, oh no, it's Zacchaeus. No way you're getting in here, buddy. So what does he do? He ran ahead, verse 4, and he ran before and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see Jesus, for he was to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him. What did he see? Oh, tax collector. Oh, sinner. Cheat, thief. Horrible human being. No, what did he see? Sinner in need of salvation. See, he's a blind sinner, but sometimes we can be blind to the sinners, can't we? What should you see when you see a sinner? See the sin? Judge them for their sin? Or reach out to them because of their sin? Is there a better way? Is there forgiveness with Jesus Christ? And that's what Jesus did. And he reached out to this blind sinner. And he said, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must abide at your house. And the whole audience went. Everyone do that together? This would be fun. 1, 2, ready? There you go. Very good. And he made haste. He came down and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all murmured, saying that he was going to be guest with a man that is a sinner. By the way, how many of them were sinners? All of them, but he's a particularly bad sinner, right? He's the kind of sinners we don't like. And Zacchaeus stood and said unto the Lord, Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I have taken anything from any man by false accusation, I restore him fourfold. What changed that day? His heart changed. His soul changed. He was no longer blind to what he was doing to people. He was harming his own people. He was driving his own people to poverty while he benefited. He says that's not right. He changed because God saw him. And that allowed him then to see who? See God. And to repent. Was Jesus happy about this? Verse 9, Jesus said to him, This day is salvation come to this house, for as much as he also is the son of Abraham. For the Son of Man is come to seek and to save that which was what? Lost. So I put up here the blind sinners. Obviously Zacchaeus was a sinner. And that blinded him to a lot of truth. But when he saw Jesus, when he spent time with Jesus, he understood, his eyes were open, and he repented of his sins. But let's face it, that whole crowd was full of sinners, wasn't it? And what do they need to see? We all need salvation. Salvation needs to come to all of us, doesn't it? And who is deserving of God's salvation? Nobody. But who needs to receive God's salvation? Everybody. So, don't be blind. Don't be blind to the sinners. Don't be blind to their needs. But show them God's love. And then finally, let's go to John chapter 11, which we were here last week. Let's just remind ourselves, again, as Jesus is going, he's having to deal. And these are the people that he's going to have to deal with when he gets to Jerusalem. He's been traveling, had the whole situation with John and James, got to Jericho, blind Bartimaeus and Zacchaeus, and he keeps going. And what is the crowd that he's going to run into when he gets to Jerusalem? Well, here's the leaders. Back when they had this time of Lazarus rising from the dead, let's remind ourselves their attitude. John chapter 11, verse 47. Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees at council and said, What do we, for this man doeth many miracles? Did they see the miracles? Yes. Some of them they saw themselves. Others they had eyewitnesses coming and telling them this is what they did. They were aware of the blind man only a few months earlier, who they accused of lying about being blind. They'd heard about So many other miracles. They'd heard about Lazarus. What do we do about this guy? He keeps doing miracles that prove he's God. What are we going to do about him? If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation. What was blinding them? Earthly power, earthly influence, earthly things. What was the only thing they were concerned about? How can I keep my position? How can I keep being the religious leader? How can I keep having people look up to me as somebody who is good? How can I keep people looking at me as if I'm somebody's important? How can I make sure that happens? And the only thing they could come up with is what? We got to kill Jesus. Because compared to him, they're what? Garbage. They're not good. They're not doing good. They're not doing what is right. They're not seeking the truth. They're not telling the truth. So you got to do what? You got to tell the truth. You got to kill the truth, right? In fact, later on, they decide they also need to kill who? They need to kill Lazarus. People can start talking about him, right? And so many people want to do that. They're blind because all they can see is the now and the here and the things of this earth, and that's all they care about. How can I preserve my position here? How can I preserve my things here? How can I preserve my relationships here? How can I do that? And when we do that, what do we give up on often? The truth. Truth. Truth is inconvenient, right? Truth is sometimes something we don't want to hear. So we search out those who will say, we're fine. We're good. And the leaders themselves. And that's how Jesus is going to ride into Jerusalem. He's going to ride into Jerusalem to a people who are blind. To leaders who are what? Purposefully blind. Refusing to see the truth. To a bunch of sinners who are what? Blind. Blinded by their sins and temptations of this world and things like that. And also judging everybody else as if they're worse. And a people, all they want to do is care about themselves, their lives, look down on anybody else who is, quote unquote, less than them. And even his disciples aren't really going to see what's going on, will they? Which brings us to you. Hello. What can blind us to the truth? Let's go one more place. Let's go to Psalm 34. Psalm 34, verse 8. Psalm 34, verse 8. O taste and what? See that the Lord is what? Good. Blessed is the man that trusts in him. What's that got to do with all of this? That's the bottom line. Do I trust God's truth? Do you? Do you know where to find it? It's right here. God's truth. God's truth about you, about your neighbor, about him, about the world, about society. It's all here. Do you trust God's truth, or are you putting your trust in your own truth? What I think should be right? What makes sense to me? Or maybe it's my friends, or this group, or that group, or those people, or some religion. Who are you putting your trust in to give you the truth? Because only the truth. And what did Jesus say about himself? I am the way, the truth, and the life. Right? He calls himself the truth. He is the truth. What he speaks is what? The truth. His word he has given us is what? Truth. And the truth shall make you free. We went through all this, didn't we? Only to be true is to seek the truth in every situation. What kind of situation are we talking about? Well, when it comes to storms of life, problems. Anybody got problems out there? Everybody's got problems. Some are greater than others. Some are more pressing than others. Some are scarier than others. Some are going through big storms, some little storms, right? Some are going through 15 seconds of peace. No matter what, are you going to trust the truth that God is with you? Are you going to trust the truth that God loves you? Are you going to trust the truth that He will see you through? Are you going to trust Him? Are you going to see all the times He did it before? Are you going to see Him there with you and know He will get you through? Are you going to do that? What about when it comes to the future? What do you see in the future? What are you trusting in for your security? Well, if I just get this, if I just get that, if I just earn this and I just earn that, then I'll be secure. Then I will have a good future. Then everything is going to be okay. What am I trusting there? My sight. My ideas. Instead of doing what? Who are you going to trust? I'm going to do it God's way every step of the way. That's who I'm going to trust. That's my future. In my job, I'm going to do it under the Lord. I'm going to do it His way. I'm going to do it right. In my relationships with my family, I'm going to do it God's way. In my relationship with my friends, I'm going to do it God's way. I'm going to do it God's way every step of the way, and I'm going to trust His truth that He has a good future for me. The best future. Are you going to do that? Are you going to trust something else? Who are you trusting to fix this country? Fair question. Unless you're one of those who think we're all good. We're all just doing fine. Who are you going to trust? You going to trust the truth? Trust God? Or trust something else or someone else? How about to fix you? Nah, I'm good. No. Said before, I'll say it again. Who's going to lie to you more than anybody else in your life? You, yeah. We lie to ourselves, oh, I'm good, I think everything's fine. No, we've got things to work on. Who are you going to trust? Dr. Phil? No. Oprah? No. Who are you going to who are you going to trust to fix you? To get right, to make the changes you need that you know you need. Who are you going to trust? Trust the truth. Trust God, right? Taste and see that the Lord is what? Good. In every situation, everything. Trust and see that He is good, and then I will trust in Him. Amen? That's what we need to do. Don't be blind. Don't be blind by your own selfish desires and seeking of glory and things here on earth or even things in the future. Don't be blind to those around you in need. Don't be blind to those who are sinners, who need salvation. Don't be blind in your own temptations and your own sins. And don't be blind just saying, I don't want the truth. I need to get this truth out of here. I need to get rid of this truth because it keeps telling me I'm wrong. By the way, does that solve anything? If you're wrong, does getting rid of all those who say you're wrong going to fix the fact you're wrong? No. Truth is the truth is the truth. How long has the truth been the truth? Always. How long will it be the truth? Forever. Put your trust in the truth, Jesus Christ, His word, His way. Let's pray. Heavenly